I'm Bill Roberts of the Food Science Department at North Carolina State. North Carolina is in a dilemma. Our per capita income is just above 40th in the nation. There's a scarcity of jobs and opportunities, both on the farms and in the cities. Our best young people are leaving the state by the thousands. This is a gloomy picture, but there is something that we can do about it. We're primarily an agricultural state. Our basic resources are land and people, and we can build on this great heritage.
Winds of change are sweeping across our landscape, turning rural crossroads into towns, towns into cities, cities into urban centers. And to feed this shifting and rising population, our farmlands are transforming, our industries widening their enterprise. Tobacco and cotton, though still profitable crops, have lost their monopoly over our best soils in the face of a new agricultural opportunity, the production and processing of food. It is said that North Carolina will become a horn of plenty for the East, and with good cause. In her fertile soils, vegetable crops luxuriate twice over through a 280-day coastal plains season. Fruits are mellowed in a rare Appalachian climate. 50 inches of rainfall annually join her many rivers spilling westward toward the Mississippi, eastward into the vast coastland of Atlantic fishing waters. Livestock and poultry are now an industry nourished by a benevolent climate and scientific research. Already this new wealth of the soil and sea is being tapped by food processing plants, where it is preserved, packaged, and sped over some of the nation's finest road.
Potatoes, dehydrated from Idaho. A salad made of lettuce from California, savored with a dressing ready-made in Illinois. For dessert, cherries shipped in frozen from Michigan. These are processed foods, a meal almost cooked before it's purchased.
We could not provide this meal away from home, this variety of foods, if it weren't for the food processing.
Well, now, why not, Red?
Well, Bill, back in the old days when I first started in this business, you used to have to keep the chickens in the basement. You'd have to go down, kill those chickens, pick them, cut them up. You used to have half cattle coming through your back door. Had to have a fancy meat cutter to break down that half cattle, get it down into sections of the parts of the meat that you wanted to use. Then it would be very difficult to get each size of portion, just to cut into the exact size you wanted. And also you had this job of peeling potatoes. You had to do a lot of potato peeling, had to do a lot of cutting, whereas today, all of that type of food comes in, ready to go to the oven or to the frying pan, and the uniformity means so much. If you got 4 people sitting at a table like this, you're sure that 4 people's gonna get the exact same quality and the same portions. We feed 3,000 people a day, 1 million meals a year. So many people eating away from home these days, you might call this mass feeding here, institutional feeding. And just like the airlines, the schools, the governments, the hospitals, we have to be pretty demanding when it comes to food we buy. Quality, standards, and uniformity.
If the hungry American public likes its meals in a hurry at the restaurant, it also likes home meals without fuss and bother. To get semi-prepared foods, the housewife turns to one of the biggest food buyers of all, the chain supermarket.
The story of the supermarket is really evidence of a food revolution in America. Convenience and time saving. The customers are looking for foods that are convenient. They no longer look for the items that you have to soak, stir, and mix. They look for items now that you heat, serve, and eat. Whether this food revolution is caused by new marketing techniques or by the increased tempo of people on the move is hard for me to say. But one thing for sure, we in the supermarkets are going to have to please the housewife. She will always be the boss.
Most housewives I know are much too busy to spend time in the kitchen, and even spend time shopping for that matter. Thank heaven they're able to get so many foods at the grocery store that are already half prepared, saving time. Think of how long it would take to shuck all that corn. I don't think it's necessary really today to shop but once a week if you're smart and if you have a freezer.
Well, I know what some of you are thinking. The old-fashioned taste of old-fashioned cooking, back before there was mention of food processing. But before some of you make the reckless accusation that foods don't taste like they used to, beware of our independent housewife.
I think one of the most ridiculous charges in the world is that you can't be a good cook and use processed foods. I buy as many foods that will save me time as possible, to save time, to devote to a family of 4 children and a husband. And I think really that the art of cooking is in the proper selection of food and in seasoning. That's what makes a satisfied family.
One of the big problems is the distance that we have to transport some of these convenient foods. As an example, we have frozen foods coming from California, up in New Jersey, and down in Georgia. We feel that a great many of these items could be grown and processed here in North Carolina, and it would be a tremendous saving to the consumer in freight rate alone. We are very North Carolina conscious. Let me show you. We feature products that are processed in the state of North Carolina: baby food, country ham, dairy products, pickles, various other items. And we hope that as the years go by that there will be hundreds and hundreds of other items processed in North Carolina that we can sell during this sale.
Well, I know that this is good news for our farmers and processors in this state to know that they have an outlet such as this to sell their products.
Supermarkets, restaurants, food brokers, and canners are all looking for the dependable raw product. They realize that there will always be a demand for fresh foods, but they seek to convince the farmer that food processing is a serious business proposition, not a dumping ground for occasional fresh market gluts. Although the food industry offers financial improvement and added security, Tar Heel farmers will not be able to reap fantastic rewards from it, as they sometimes do from produce buyers. The contracting processor or the fresh produce buyer, a choice that the food producer considers carefully.
Farmers who still take a lot of their fancy produce to the open fresh market, rather than to the more stable market, the food processor. Here's FCX manager Frank Tanner in Lumberton.
Our chief problem down here is developing and receiving from the farmers a quality raw product which is necessary for us to fulfill our orders and ship out to our markets. This winter, we went up to the Sandhill section to see about a supply of peaches. While we were up there to the meeting, one of the big growers, after the meeting had developed for some time, he said, "Mr. Tanner, we can adequately sell our first quality merchandise. What we're interested in is for you handling our cold peaches." I said, "Gentlemen," I said, "the term cold in our business means garbage." I said, "In other words, you want us to be your garbage disposal?" I said, "No." I said, "We've got to have just a finer quality to go in our cans as what can be attained. We can't improve it." So that means that we really have to have an adequate quality supply of raw material so that we can, in turn, turn out a quality product.
But Lumberton farmers, like farmers everywhere, are rugged individualists, used to deciding their own crops and markets. One of the thorny problems in establishing a processing business is to recognize its relationship with the supplying farmers.
Contract farming is an agreement between the processor and the farmer, whereby the processor guarantees the farmer a price, pre-stipulated price, for the raw material the farmer is going to produce. The farmer, in turn, guarantees us as a processor that he will deliver these these vegetables to us of a certain quantity at a harvest time.
That's good business and good farming. But it wasn't easy for Roy, too, to get this idea across to the farmers in Dunn.
Well, the first 2 or 3 years we were here, farmers were somewhat skeptical. It was very difficult to get agreements to grow produce for us. But since that time, farmers have been beginning to be more dependent upon our contracts. They've accepted our contracts and our way of contract farming.
Mr. Westbrook, these look like some mighty fine peppers here. How is your crops this year?
We have a right nice crop.
How have farmers sold their crops in this area?
Well, we're growing cotton and tobacco and vegetables. That's been our line for years. I'd say for years, 30, 40 years, I reckon. We used to do right much truck farming. But at that time, we marketed everything fresh vegetables.
Why were you farmers so skeptical at first about growing for a food processing plant?
Why, I think probably they had grown some under contract. Probably they didn't prove satisfaction, and they were a little bit dubious, you might say, of going into this. But I think they're well pleased now.
Their previous experience wasn't so good then, was it?
No. That makes you a little bit more skeptical, you know, to get in anything. You know?
Yes.
It gets you a little bit, sometimes you think twice before you...
Well, what is the farmer's attitude now about growing under contract in this region?
I said, well, as long as the prices was $4 a bushel, why, we prefer the open market. But when they get down to where they were $1 a bushel, why, then they come back here to the counter. Well, you come up here and you sign your contract, and you know then the price that you're going to get for that peppers when it's delivered here in good condition. And then it's up to you just to see how much of that you can grow per acre. That means the profit that you get out of it.
You can concentrate all your efforts and energy on growing it and growing it to the right quality and so on, and let Mr. Two over here worry about the market for it.
The dairy industry, unlike fruit and vegetable processing, is a year-round activity, offering steady employment to contractors. It is one of North Carolina's pioneer food industries, stretching back to the time when the state's people had to import not only milk, but many other foodstuffs. When most arable land was given over to non-food cash crops. Dairying has made great strides, engendering with it such allied industries as trucking and refrigeration. Using modern and efficient machinery, always applying the latest research, it can now purify and liberate from odors the raw product of milk and convert it into a huge rack of consumer goods. No longer is there a dairy deficit in Carolina.
In dairying, North Carolina has grown at a rate that even Wisconsin would envy. A 20-year success story increasing cash farm income by $60 million. Again, the attitude of the individual farmer is important, as Dairyman Glenn Carruthers points out.
We had an operation, we grew a lot of our own food. We had various small farming enterprises, some tobacco, some poultry, some dairying. But now times have changed. We no longer have the time, can afford to take the time to process our own food and do these small operations that we had. We now specialize in just one thing, which is dairying, which is our sole income, and it's very important to us, of course. We now have to depend on selling raw milk to our local dairy distributor who processes this for the public. Of course, our success depends on the success of our local dairy distributor, and when he is successful in making a profit, that reflects on our income. When he gets in financial trouble or due to price squeezes and competition, that reflects on our income also. When my father started dairying, we had approximately 15 cows. We realized that today we could not operate with 15 cows. We have increased to approximately 4 times that many. We have to be larger and more efficient. I think the key to success now is efficiency.
But if one farmer can specialize, so then can another farmer diversify, try new enterprises, experiment, and become his own food processor, like Louis Upchurch of Rayford, North Carolina, a farmer with small beginnings, but big ideas.
We decided to try the fish farming enterprise. We got our information from the southeastern part of the United States, and we believe it has real possibility within our area, but it is a thing that will probably come into its own in the next few years. It's not right at the present. There's a big demand in the Midwest for commercially dressed and packaged catfish of the channel variety, not our native mudcat. We feel that perhaps we can raise more protein per acre through our ponds than we can through our grassland. We are a general farm consisting of livestock, hogs, cattle, row crops, timber management. We have only a little over a year ago begun to process country-cured hams here on the farm. And we have approached this thing with the idea that we would go into it in a limited manner, and as the market, or our particular market, grew, we would expand as necessary. And we feel now that we are rapidly approaching the point where that we would desire to have federal inspection so that we can move out of North Carolina and into an interstate market. We have diversified, or tried to diversify, our family farm enterprise due to the fact that we feel we should spread our income out over more than just the fall period of the year.
Another such family enterprise, which grew from humble beginnings on a farm in Alamance County, centered on pickles. Almost 80 years ago, Kate's Pickles began with Grandmother Kate's special Springhouse recipe, whose success caused the family to diversify operations and shift later to Faison, in the middle of North Carolina truck farming country where the cucumbers are. The vanguard of Kate's steady and measured progress has been research. Work with North Carolina state scientists has led to the discovery of superior techniques of processing and preserving pickles. A.P. Cates has seen his company grow into a $1 million business and has observed many refinements in food processing techniques over the years.
Some of the primary areas in which conditions are so much different now from what they were when Kate's Pickles were first manufactured is first the securing of raw materials, which were primarily produced on the family farm at the beginning of the manufacture of Kate's Pickles. Now we are growing cucumbers for pickles on approximately 4,000 farms in South Carolina, North Carolina, and Virginia. However, they're primarily produced in North Carolina. Cucumbers are very easy to produce, to grow, which can be done cheaply. However, the most difficult part is picking, and usually a crop has to be picked 12 or 15 times, usually about 3 times a week for 4 to 5 weeks.
For Kate's, the green season is a frenzied harvest time when 500,000 bushels of cucumbers are gathered from 5,000 farmer-contracted acres. Quite a change from the gay 90s, especially when the massive harvest and processing begins.
If new varieties and proper mechanical harvesting aids can be successfully developed, it will probably mean that instead of 1 1/2 acres per producer, that the producers of the future will produce from 50 to 75 acres each.
There will always be an opportunity for the small food processor, as Kate's once was, wherever there's an appetite or a need. But we have now entered the larger stage of national markets. This means that vast corporations are turning their eyes to North Carolina. Sealtest, Swifts, Borden's, and Gerber's. These big firms, once settled in a new locale, do not stand alone. They depend on the cooperation of local people. Manager John Erickson of Gerber's plant high in the Appalachians of western North Carolina.
We believe that we have a very, very fine relationship with the farmers. I believe they were a little afraid of us at first because it's my understanding that there have been several what I would call fly-by-night processors that were here for 1 year, and they contracted with the farmer but never lived up to the contract. So I believe after they saw us build this size building we've built, pouring several $1 million into it and about the equal amount of dollars into equipment, that they could see that we were here to stay. And today I believe we have the finest relationship with the farmers of anybody could have. Many people have asked why we chose western North Carolina for our plant site. There are many reasons. Probably the number one reason is the fact that we're close to our source of supply of fruits and vegetables. Number two, we had to have transportation to deliver the finished product to our customers and also have transportation to bring it into our plant. We also needed a labor supply that was plentiful and willing to put out a day's work, which I might say we're very satisfied with. We had to have an adequate water supply. It had to be plentiful and it had to be clean. We also needed, after using this water, we had to have a waste disposal. And all these things were provided in our location here in Asheville.
Gerber's of Asheville pays out millions of dollars annually for supplies and for farm products such as beans, carrots, potatoes, squash, peas, apples, and peaches. 20 million pounds of produce a year. Almost a 1,000-man labor force. Gerber's has indeed made an impact on the Asheville area. That additional industry which the Gerber factory has fostered. Let's find out from one of its workers that story. Pardon me, sir. Are you employed by another food processing firm?
No, sir. This is no food processing plant. We make glass jars here. I and 300 other people make jars for the processing plants that are springing up in North Carolina.
A new industry like food processing is bound to create a big splash. Its economic influence ripples out in every direction. Produce Processors Incorporated, PPI as it's called, is a factory that sprang up in Windsor, North Carolina, soon after North Carolina state scientists saw the flaking of sweet potatoes to make them more uniform. The result of food processing research.
Now, without that, taking this raw sweet potato, converting it into instant yam or sweet potato flakes, it would have been an impossibility. We would have never ground out our first product. Now, we can take the sweet potato. You take a number one sweet potato, there's still a market for it fresh. You don't need to process it. Where we can take the smaller potatoes, the larger potatoes, the misshapen potatoes, the internal meat of that potato is still the same. When we take and flake it in our flaking process and come up with it in the can, I can't and no one can tell whether it came from a pretty number one, whether it came from a two or a jumbo or what. In the food processing business today, everything hinges on uniformity. We sell a man in January, we sell him in June, he wants the same product both times.
The nucleus for food research is at North Carolina State. The 25-man Department of Food Scientists keep in close touch with the food farmer, the processor, and the consumer. Now, our research scientists already have many achievements to their credit. Their work, for example, in cutting the curing time of country hams, removing all flavors from milk, prolonging the shelf life of broilers and eggs, producing sweet potatoes and pumpkin flakes. And we also have a Department of Extension that provides information for those people who are working in the field, to keep them up to date, to keep them modern, progressive. Also, we have a training program that educates many young men and women to become leaders and specialists in the food industry.
Now, in return, in future, with students at institutions like North Carolina State College,
they could send students into the field to us or anyone in the food processing business. And those students could learn from industry what they can't learn from textbooks. The last 2 summers, we have sent one of our young men out of our plant up to North Carolina State College to work with Dr. Hoover in research on our product primarily. Now, this boy has come back, has learned a lot, and has been a help to us.
I got out of high school in 1960, and I worked for a year. And I started reading about produce processors getting started, and I became quite interested in it. And I came out and applied for a job, and I was hired. I worked 1 season with them, and a chance came up for me to go to State College for the summer months and work with Dr. Hoover in his lab.
Our instruction program permits students who want a career in the food industry to prepare themselves with a university degree. We sketched a story of food processing in North Carolina. A modern version of a story as old as man himself, the best possible preparation of his daily bread. Food processing is not an easy industry. This mining of food from the soil, this paring and readying of food for the market squares of the nation and the world. Food processing is an industry that will generate new markets, new jobs, new hope. It is a fresh chapter in the 200-year-old history of North Carolina's agricultural way of life.